The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your brother Malik, back on Free Talk Fridays, SFTB INC. This is how we do. We are sitting here in the cut right now, chilling with Brother Nhiyall. Brother Nhiyall, say what's up.
What's up?
Yep. And Brother James holding it down for Zamunda.
Hootie-hoo!
Yeah, so what's on your mind tonight, fellas?
The Return of the Walking Dead. Back from the dead.
That was a interesting return. Kill off more black people. Yep.
Exactly. That was kind of my first thoughts. I mean, as soon as they were rolling the flashback, whatever the hell that editing intro scene was, that was kind of like choppy pieces of flashbacks from the episode you're about to watch, and they show Noah crying and blood all over his face and shit. Well, you knew some major character was gonna die. And then when it was time, yeah, and then
that's gonna be the black guy. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Which black guy? Because they have two now, and they're over their quota. Which was exactly my thoughts. As soon as they indicated that it was going to be Tyrese because he got bit and shit, I'm like, oh yeah, they added Noah, so now they've gone over their black guy quota and they have to have equilibrium and balance it back out. Every season that happens, they got to trade out one black guy with another.
I still miss T-Dog, man. Shoot, man, that guy was holding it down, and frickin' he ended up dying in a prison.
I would actually kind of say I like Tyrese more than T-Dog because
everybody says that. If you check like Twitter, everybody was like devastated. They're like, "Oh my god, it's my favorite black guy ever!" Like, right, there's like white girls crying on like the Twitter feeds.
And it's not for T-Dog's fault. You know, the character tried to get what he could out of the character the first season, but during the second season when they were on the farm, they relegated him to such a non-factor in the background that is, you know, when his death came, he almost didn't even feel, he didn't even care. Like, well, he only had 2 episodes this season, so we didn't lose much. But with Tyrese, it seems like they centered a lot of plot and character development around him. That you fell for it. You became emotionally invested, which with this show you should never do. Yeah. Even if it's Rick, you don't become emotionally invested in him because the moment you do, you know he's gonna get fucking killed off. Even if he's the main character, he's gonna get killed off.
Yeah, and you know I'm not the only one that noticed the constant dismemberment of the African American cast of the show due to zombie invasions. And I mentioned such a topic on my Facebook page, and I had a certain individual comment, "Oh, come on, they're killing off all the people, not just the black people." I said, "Hey, I don't see Carl getting killed no time soon. Just saying. That guy is going to be 40 years old still, like, walking around the show."
Yep. I mean, you know, people make things race neutral that really are not race neutral. You know, it's like, come on, let's all just ignore it and act like it's not happening. And it's like, yeah, it is happening. And I think ignoring it kind of makes it even worse because it's like, yeah.
They just need better cast writers. I mean, like, these cast writers are fucking dumbasses, and they're purposely like pissing people off. You know, same thing with Game of Thrones. Well, Game of Thrones is based on a book, so I guess they got to stay with that plot. But I mean, yeah.
Walking Dead has a graphic novel that it follows, though, or loosely follows. So.
Really?
Yeah.
When was that published?
Oh, well, it came out a couple years before the show started.
Oh, okay. So. All right. Interesting. Well, I'm gonna have to check to see how much continuity there is with that.
Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
It follows it loosely. Like I said, they'll try to stick to major story arcs, but that's it.
Yeah.
Even the cast is significantly different than what you have in the book.
Like okay, Daryl. So it's like loosely based.
Yeah, like major characters like Daryl aren't in the comic.
No,
so.
Okay. I got you. All right. This is the perfect time, James, for you to go. Speaking of...
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Father Divine, I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, since they can't see our screen, that's the avatar that Malik is using.
Correct.
It's a picture of Father Divine. So.
Correct.
And I'm using my Google And it seems like this dude was a very prominent dude. So is there any information you want to give to the audience about Father Divine, and who was he? And
yeah. He was a early to mid 20th century charismatic leader who gave himself the holy righteous title of God Almighty himself, and was really the first of his kind to really do something like this within the communities that he was working within. Wikipedia does a way better job of explaining all the details, so I will direct all the listeners to Google him and definitely look him up. But he was a very charismatic character that definitely caught a lot of people's eye. And there's a funny encounter that his ministry had with the People's Temple, Jim Jones, but I'll let people look into that by themselves. Very interesting guy to a study. I mean, this guy influenced a lot of later movements that sprung up in America. So,
yeah, because I'm like looking through his pictures. This dude seemed like a jazzy dude. I mean, like,
yeah,
he has mother Divine, and she's white, and
yeah.
she's
she took over. Yeah, like when he died.
Yeah, and in 1930s, or this looks like 1920s, maybe 1930s. That was like a no. So it's pretty, interesting about that history, and
absolutely,
and how that affect people today. Like with other movements. So yeah.
Just reading over the summary on Wikipedia, for whatever that's worth, it may not be accurate, and Malik can probably attest as I read here. But just reading the summary here on Wikipedia, it sounds like we can also thank this guy maybe for Tumblr, because
I know he has
some of his doctrines on here sound like they would fit right in on Tumblr. Like it says down here, he taught celibacy and the rejection of gender categorizations. So check your cisgender privilege there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never got too deep into the doctrine. That's interesting. It's funny.
Yeah, he promoted gender equality.
Well, gender equality, but it says that he's also was against gender categorizations. So
interesting.
Are you a cis male, or are you inner male, or are you otherkin, or all these other Tumblr categories? It sounds like that might be able to trace its lineage back to him, for all I know. So
I seriously think that that the form of labeling and categorization today that we all have to deal with is just so I mean, it's just bullshit. All this fucking pansexual, trans, this, that. I mean, it's just stupid. And really, what it comes down to is we are a species with a bunch of different fetishes and preferences, and that's it. But needless to say, our species is a very unique species, that is very over obsessed with pleasure. So.
Okay, well, that much I can agree with. When you added that last bit of clarification, that we're over obsessed with that, or we dwell on it too much. But when you're saying that we're complex and that might be unique, I'm like, I don't know. Do you know how many pet dogs I've had and that I've seen that will try to fuck not only their own gender but even their own family? Like they're born from the same litter, and a brother will try to fuck a sister.
I'm not disputing that.
And, or they'll fuck a stuffed animal. And
yeah, but they won't. Nature. Yeah, but they won't attack each other and break off into straight dog packs and be like, hey, you can't train at our dog schools. Yeah, because you were fucking your brother or something. Yeah.
This is the white pit bulls. We are the white pit
bulls.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And they won't DMCA your blog on Tumblr or anything like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I agree that, it is a system. It's purely economic. I mean, it's very institutional. Like race and racism is very institutional. It's like you have to have prejudice, and then you have to have institutional power, and then that's how you be a race or a racist.
It just comes down to control and like now, like money, now that we have currency and stuff like that, the more you can kind of hog tie a group into a certain, corner, and
the more you can carve out a unique niche for your own product to pitch it out there as something unique that people have to have.
Exactly.
In a way, the first example that comes to my mind, even though I don't want to overflow into another segment that we have, which is religious talk, but it reminds me of like when I was working at a Christian bookstore and they were explaining to me the real reason for why there's so many different Bible translations out there. It's not really that these theologians care about trying to get a more accurate translation. It's that in order to get a copyright on a translation, yours has to be significantly different from all the other translations out there. Otherwise, you're just engaging in plagiarism. So if you want to market a certain Bible and sell it and make a profit off of it, that where the profits will go exclusively to you, since you have the exclusive copyright on it, it has to be substantially different from the other translations out there. And that's the reason for it. It's not because they necessarily think that the words they're using are more accurate to the original language.
Right.
It's just because they want to make money off of it.
Yeah. And they pick, people that couldn't make it in Europe, or couldn't make it in Spain. So it's kind of like, wait, which era were we in? Am I correct?
It was 1611, I think, was when they
came. Yeah. Because some of that stuff just runs together because it's kind of like, it's all circular kind of. It's like, yeah. So from 1611 and King James, now we have certain banking systems and certain agricultural systems and now we want to, find this thing called the New World, which is around 1492. So, man, it's just...
and that is a whole crazy fucked up story in itself, because they just kept branching out, and then the 13 colonies weren't good enough, so they're like, hey, fuck Britain, we're gonna do our own thing, and freaking
right,
which everybody was excited for. All of like the slaves and like freed black people were like, yeah, like we're all gonna be, become one country. Wrong. Things got 10 times worse, right? Freaking abuse on the plantation went up like fucking 50-fold. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. Freed black people that were living in the 13 colonies since like the late 1500s. They were taken as slaves or like bonded, like servitude people or whatever. There's different classifications for that. And it just turned to hell. That's why people started fleeing to Canada. And so after the Americans started to form America, the United States, they just kept branching out. And when they couldn't get a treaty going with the indigenous tribes, then they would just kill them off, which really got bad during the gold rush. And they finally took over the last bits of Native American territory just around the year 1900. I mean, the United States as we know it today, with the borders today, is only about 100 years old. Okay, the 1776 thing is bullshit. Is the biggest liar. There was still thousands of miles of Native American land in 1776. There was no American borders like we see it today on the map. I mean, that just recently happened. So, but
pretty
nobody knows
this
as
far as that time was concerned.
And it's not like we can right the wrong neither. I mean, only Native American tribes know about that information, and it's such a benign evil that is not talked about in America that, there's nothing that we could do to spread the knowledge. I mean, except for talk on, podcasts or, what I mean?
Too much inertia at this point.
Yeah. There was an article I was reading. Hold on. Let me bring it up. It was by Lowen, and pages 1 through 135. Hold up, it's loading. And it was basically talking about the denial of Native American genocide.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know
his name
people
was-
were still that like stupid today. Wow, that's interesting. Like that's a whole new type of stupid.
That was
Well,
actually sorry to interrupt you, but that was actually one of the things that really frustrated me years ago. It was about 10 years ago when I was still with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I don't know if you're familiar with their doctrines, but they're heavy into eschatology, like the end times and all that kind of shit. Because that was the foundation of their religion, was a botched prophecy of 1844 and William
Oh,
Miller and
yeah.
all that shit. Google that, because
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that right now. But when they're interpreting certain prophecies out of Revelation, one of the things they try to interpret is, for the listeners, if you're familiar with Revelation, I believe it's chapter 13. There's a description in there of a lesser beast. Everyone knows about the big beast with the 7 heads. There's a lesser beast in there that's described as being like a lamb or a sheep that has 2 horns rising up out of the earth, while the 7-headed beast rises up out of the sea. The way the Adventists want to interpret that, because everything has to have some kind of interpretation to our modern times for some reason. That's the way these people like to do it. Um, they, since this came out in the 19th century, they interpreted the that beast with 2 horns for some reason as being the rising of the United States. And they said those 2 horns are the foundation of our country, which is church and state. It's a lot of ad hoc shit, just a lot of pulling shit out of their ass to try to make it fit into the try to make it have certain parallels to this very allegorical language. And the 7-headed beast, they of course interpreted it as being the Roman Empire, which continues through the Roman Catholic Church, Europe, basically in short. And they'll say that because the 7-headed beast rises up out of the sea, that sea, which I think Revelation even says that represents the peoples of the earth, they're like, okay, that means that beast arose out of a populated area. And since the lamb-like beast arises out of the earth, that must be an unpopulated area, which was the United States. And since it
Oh,
rises
wow.
up like a lamb, yeah, that's one thing. That started to get me right there. And
This is
then they
starting
said
to sound like
because-
Mormonism. Okay, go ahead.
yeah. And then they said, well, they also, both of those denominations arose at the same time, because it was
Right.
around the 1840s that Mormonism rose as well. But that's another topic. But also, they say that because it arose like a lamb, and something about the words it speaks, or the tongue of the words of this beast, because it arose like a lamb, that it arose peacefully. That was the other thing that got me. I'm like, do you not know anything about the history of the U.S.? And what got me more pissed about it was that this came out in the 19th century, when Ellen White was the lady who founded this particular denomination, when the American Revolution was not that far removed. It was still kind of in recent memory. Like, there were still people alive at that time in the 1840s who had lived through the American Revolution. So it's like, really, you were that close? It was still in recent memory, the founding of your country, and you've already forgotten the history, or at least the brainwashing was already that deep amongst the general populace that you've forgotten how this country was actually founded on a big
Oh, dude.
genocide of the natives here. It was not
Dude.
founded in peace at all.
Yeah, and James W. Lowen, and he was talking about how American history textbooks pretty much lie to kids on what is accurate and what is not accurate. And this is how this brainwashing is taking effect, is because a lot of American history textbooks, dumb down history so much that they don't give the accurate history of their own country, and I thought it was a very interesting academic article, and it really it basically it told America from a different perspective, and the perspective that's given to us is like, yeah, we're America, we're better than everybody, 'cause
Right.
we're
Yeah.
America, and this says, it's not true, because now we're lying in history books just to prove our belief in America.
That's the same
So,
thing countries like North Korea do too. I mean, they do that same form of like teaching, and so, but they're more extreme about it.
Revisionist history.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's great. And like the thing is that every country kind of has a school curriculum that they have to follow, and that if a teacher goes off of that, they risk losing their job.
And when it comes to like grade school or whatever, the education before you get to university, the scary thing about that is it's not determined by other academics in the way that it is at universities, where it's, peer reviewed, and it's other academics who determine what, credentialed people who determine what gets put into the textbooks there, and what you learn. When it comes to grade school, like K through 12, the curriculum there is determined by parents, soccer moms and such, who are on the boards of education there in these places, who vote in these meetings on what gets put in the curriculum, and a big example of that is, like, the infamous, board of educations in boards of education in schools in Texas, where they still want to teach, like, young earth creationism and biblical, with a biblical slant on it, with a
That's
Christian
so
biblical
retarded.
slant. Exactly. But even beyond that, I mean, they don't just want to revise, like, ancient history, but even, like, American history, which we were just talking about. Like, they will vote down stuff that they consider, quote, unpatriotic, and that casts America in, quote, a bad light. So things like the Native American genocide are obviously going to be played down, if not entirely omitted, because, that these hardcore Christian evangelical people and soccer moms and good wholesome American conservative value type people don't want to. No, America's the country founded by God. We're founded on biblical principles, 10 commandments in the courtyard.
America is like that dude at the nightclub that just, like, picks bar fights with people for no reason.
Exactly.
It's just like this is America, dude. This is like the bully dude that just comes to other countries and just, like, kicks over their stuff and knocks their drinks off the off the table. Yeah.
Yeah. In the spirit of James here, speaking of fighting, what's up with this Pacquiao Mayweather fight? Holy smokes. Has anyone else heard the Pacquiao payment amount that he's getting to finally knuckle up with Mayweather?
Yes, it is 250 million, I believe.
Yes. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of money, okay?
Hey, it's the dream match. It's the fight of this generation, the Tyson Holyfield of this generation,
That makes me never want to fight for free again. Ever, okay? Just to know this guy's getting paid like a fucking country, like, government salary, right, to fucking fight somebody. I'm sorry. If somebody tries to fight me, I need at least like $1,000 now, like, minimum. Yeah, I mean, that is ridiculous. That is nuts.
And the thing is, Mayweather's a genuinely dislikable person, though. Ali had appeal to him. He was more like fight the man, fight the power kind of shit, and, like, he was the people's champion, though, like the regular.
Why is everyone always talking about Joe Frazier? Joe Frazier.
Looked into that one, huh? But yeah, but with Mayweather,
that's just insane amounts of money, though. That's like serious money being paid. I mean, I can't even think of a different sport where somebody to get paid that much for one, showing of a performance. I mean, that's right, like Wall Street money right there. It's like investment banker money. That's crazy. But hey, as you Americans say, there's nothing wrong with making a buck. So, yeah.
Right. I like money. Idiocracy. I like money.
So, some good movies.
Fast Food Nation. There we go. That's the name of that shit.
Oh, well, yeah, I've seen that. Where he talks about, like, corporations and their relationship to fast food and how that affects people and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I also saw the movie Super Size Me, where this guy.
Yeah, that was a good one.
He literally, yeah.
Which, for the listeners who aren't aware, was an experiment of where a guy did 30 days straight of just McDonald's. He ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All of his meals were at McDonald's. And he also this was when they were still offering the Super Size Me option, which was to bump everything up to large for free, or for an extra 30 cents, something to that effect. And incidentally, they stopped doing that the moment this film was released. All the bad flack they got from this film. The guy couldn't get the Super Size Me, though, I think, unless they offered it to him. But when he did the experiment, they ended up offering it to him at every single meal. So he got every single meal supersized. But within just 30 days, I think it was that he put on 15 pounds and his libido went down and his cholesterol skyrocketed and all kinds of bad health problems in just a mere 30 days of eating nothing but McDonald's for every meal. In his experiment as well.
Biology is a huge factor with all of these type of things, and when you're guinea pigging your body, your genetic deterministic nature that that like you have inherited from your forefathers is the big difference maker. This applies the exactly same way to people who take steroids and performance enhancing drugs. Some people can do steroids for 20 years straight and then quit and be completely fine, and they don't get all these bad side effects and get angry and stuff like that. Sometimes their biology just will adapt and adjust to it. Most people, their body can't do that, and then they start getting roid rage, or when they stop taking it, then their muscle starts turning like to fat stuff, and they get boobies.
Right. Or they can stop doing steroids for 20 years and then just drop dead out of nowhere, like the Ultimate Warrior did last year around this time. So, but
what?
Speaking of steroids, wasn't there another fighter who in recent times failed a drug test for steroids, and you wouldn't think it to look at that guy, but evidently he failed twice for the test.
I'm just kind of in shock right now that the Warriors did. I didn't know about that.
That news is like a year old. You didn't.
Wow. Well, that's sad. Okay.
Yeah, he was only like 53 too. While he wasn't a young man, he was too young to be dying.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, he was, and that was the thing of it, was the timing of it. It was real creepy because he had just.
How is Razor Ramon still alive and freaking doing like documentaries?
How is Hulk Hogan and these other assholes still? Ric Flair still alive. All these guys. Exactly. Jake Roberts. How are all these guys still alive? And it's Warrior. The good ones die young, you know. Yeah, it was weird, the timing of it too, like because he had just gotten back into the good graces with WWE, finally made amends with Vince McMahon, and was inducted into their Hall of Fame during WrestleMania weekend. Which, for the listeners who don't watch wrestling, WrestleMania is like the biggest show in professional wrestling every year, which takes place in around April or so. It's their Super Bowl by comparison there, by analogy. So yeah, the Ultimate Warrior, if you don't remember, was a huge wrestler back in the 80s. He was on par with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and Ric Flair and all those guys. And then in around the early 90s, he had a falling out with the WWE, and they just like weren't on speaking terms, and they were always battling each other in court for like 20 years there. They were just real blood enemies. And then last year, the Ultimate Warrior made amends with the WWE and was inducted into their Hall of Fame. And so after that Hall of Fame ceremony, the next night he comes out on TV, on the WWE TV, and speaks to the fans. And the speech he gave was kind of eerie in that it talked like that. He said, "There comes a time when every man breathes his last breath, when his heart beats its last beat, and he has to reflect on the legacy he's left behind." It's kind of like real, like eerie closure kind of speech. And the very next day, he drops dead at the airport from a heart attack, like heart failure or whatever. And it's like, really?
Wow.
Oh, dude, and Eddie Guerrero died of a heart attack too. I'm not sure how, because the dude was in pretty good shape. I mean, appearance-wise.
Right. Well, he had done steroids before. I don't think at the time of his death he was still on steroids, but he was known to have very bad substance abuse problems throughout his entire life, and a problem of like mixing different medications, which a lot of wrestlers are known to do, to take like a lot of drugs illegally without prescription and shit, and mix medications that they shouldn't be mixing, and that's suspected to be part of the problem with Eddie Guerrero leading to his death.
Speaking of coked out of his mind,
I'm in love with the
Tony Montana.
Actually, we're gonna go back to MMA with that one.
Right. Okay, yeah.
I was.
Okay.
I was going back to.
Okay,
John
so
Jones.
Silva. Okay, just a comment on the Silva like steroid thing, right? Because we were about to talk about that. I am very heavily questioning the process that the UFC allows for their drug testing policy. I don't think it's sufficient. I don't think it's proper. And yeah, so I don't think Silva intentionally used any performance enhancing drugs because he knew he would test positive. Like, I don't know. I mean, he knew, right? Just like John Jones knew that his, yayo night in Brazil would test
Jones
positive.
strike me as the guy though that he just wouldn't give a shit. I think he knows he's Teflon. He's one of their bigger draws at the moment, and that no one else is even anywhere close to being on his level and going to take that title off of him. And he just knows he's Teflon. He's just going to do whatever the fuck he wants. That's the way he kind of strikes me.
Seriously, if it's recreational, who cares, right? I mean, if you want to put fucking tacos in your ass on the weekend, right? Because freaking that's your thing. Right, and have big great sex parties at the Playboy Mansion. You definitely should not be penalized for for something that's recreational. I mean that's dumb, right? Like Nick Diaz, right? Like Leslie Smith, keeps talking about Nick Diaz. Like, why the fuck are they giving Nick Diaz such a hard time? And I totally know what she means. I mean, the guy smokes weed. I mean, who cares?
And in that particular case, it's not only that he just did it recreationally, but it's that weed is the opposite of a performance enhancer.
You're right.
As far as athletics go, that calms you down and gets you mellow. How is that gonna enhance your performance?
Yeah, I can't really see a fighter on weed, being very motivated to fight. I really can't see it.
Precisely.
Especially in large amounts. I mean, that's more of a sit down and contemplate your day drug. I mean, that's not an upper.
I'm thinking there might maybe not necessarily Diaz himself, but certain fighters might toke the weed to calm anxiety, because if you're about to go before a large crowd like that, I think nerves can probably get to you. So maybe some of them smoke it before a fight to calm down. But even still, I mean, think that through. It's not that's not a I would consider that a performance enhancer in that kind of scenario. So
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and basically, it's just the same thing with football. It's especially with Marshawn Lynch. If you guys don't know, Marshawn Lynch is an NFL football player, and the NFL wanted to fine him almost $500,000 for not to announcers, $500K for not talking. And that's what.
Well, as you Americans say, I'm so angry I want to beat him with a rake.
But as we Americans also say, the right to remain silent is one of the cornerstones of the citizens' rights. You even if you're encountering the police, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to people.
Yeah, it's like code speak for you should shut the fuck up, because you should shut up, because if you talk, it can be and will be used against you in the court of law.
Or in the media.
Or in the media, which is even worse. That's almost like a beheading almost, because then everybody knows your situation, and yeah.
Which, to kind of circle it back around to pro wrestling a little bit, did any of y'all see the whole thing with Seth Rollins this past week, or if you even follow that? His fiance caught him messing around with other girls and shit out on the road, and she got into his phone and hacked his Twitter account and shit, and uploaded all the pictures of him fucking these other girls,
Holy
full
shit.
nudity,
Wow.
Full nudity, full hard on, going right into their ass and shit.
Wow.
And I think at least one of those girls also happens to work for the WWE, so
wow.
It's this big. Yeah. In an era where they're a publicly traded company that's trying to be PG and marketed to kids, they now have
right on.
one of their biggest stars is now essentially a porn star. So, and 50 Shades of Grey is coming out. So.
Yeah.
And the first person to buy a ticket is going to be all these MMA bitches.
Yeah.
They'll put on a tough exterior, but
okay, why is it that females are looking forward to this movie so much when, based on what I know about 50 Shades of Grey, it's some soft porn movie that made into a movie.
Yeah, those are the same kind of reviews I've heard that when they come from dudes. It's why wouldn't you just go ahead and watch full blown porn?
Right.
Why are you deceiving yourselves here? because the women, they need them feels. My feels, need my feels.
Well, you could go into feminine psychology and, like a woman, how she views things that are attractive to her are things that take time and patience. And that's been going on for a long time, especially because her replication power almost depends on patience somewhat. She's more drawn to patience than she is like, hit it and quit it. But it depends on the woman. It really does. Because nowadays, it really depends on the woman.
All right, fellas. We're going to take a quick break here, though. And we're going to get into a bit we did earlier called FF Interviews. And for our first guest, we interviewed Suge Knight, the infamous Suge Knight, who's going through a really rough time right now. So let's get to that, and then we'll jump back into the convo.
You are listening to Real Talk with Brotha Malik on podcast.
What's good, everybody? We are back on our first segment of FF Interviews, and we are here with our special guest, the infamous Suge Knight.
Hey.
What's good, gangsta? Totally psyched and happy to have you on the show. I know you're going through a rough patch right now. Are we coming in clear for you?
Yeah.
Right on. Cool. Yeah, so your attorney actually laid down some ground rules for us beforehand. We can't say or ask anything to incriminate you during this talk.
Right.
And no discussing where you're located currently or what device you're using to talk to us.
Right.
All right, cool. Is it fair to assume that we can ask you about your personal life and kind of maybe some things that led up to the current conflict?
I believe so.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it. So would it be fair to say then that the whole thing that caused this whole situation and the conflict in the first place was to do with the topic of your sexuality and you being out front about what your sexual preferences are? Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I can say that.
Right. So when these brothers started to confront you live on the set there that you showed up on, I guess you didn't appreciate that too much.
Brothers, huh? That what they are?
Well, I'm trying to do my best to keep things PG for the podcast here, but, these guys did call you a homosexual. Like they're saying you're involved.
I'm not a homosexual.
No, sir. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm not implying that whatsoever. This is, I just brought it up because clearly that was the root of the conflict. Are you going to get these guys back? Are you going to, fucking kill these guys or what?
Well, one of the things I would absolutely not do that, because one of the things you got to realize is this.
Mm-hmm.
It's more painful for these guys to be around and not be around. Because every day they get up before they even piss, shit.
Suge, try to keep it PG-13-ish, all right? Just a bit. We're going to try to keep it clean for a radio.
Excuse the foul language anyway. Before they get up and do anything they feel they have to do, start their day, they look down, they look around.
Okay.
And before they go from their corner, leave their house to the gas station, they got escorts.
Huh. Kind of sounds like they got 24/7 Pope mobiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but getting back to the topic here, this is some pretty, serious stuff. To each their own, but apparently you went on the record before saying that you've had male partners, but you get mad if people confront you on it, and so you're not admitting to the allegations of homosexuality, but you admit to being with men.
Right.
Okay, and I don't know what to say.
I don't have anything about, against gay people or nothing. It's just I can respect the person who's gay who come out and say they's gay.
All right, yeah, listen, man. I respect you. I don't have a problem with gay people if you're gay, whatever. But I mean, the whole thing is that you were trying to tell these guys that you weren't gay. I mean, now you're sounding like you're not sure. I mean, I know you called me dumb before, and I'm really not trying to sound rude here, but are you interested in male, butt?
I thought you was smart. You still dumb. If I want to pound some butt, I could do a woman. I'm a bisexual because I like to get my cheekbones blew out. I like to get pounded in the butt.
What the fuck is he talking about? What the fuck? Oh my God. He fucking hung up. All right, so that was our first exclusive FF interview with the infamous Suge Knight, calling from a disclosed location. And yeah, but let's hop right back into the convo here. James, why don't you touch on what you were talking about earlier on about cultural mixture and how Asian Americans, get into capoeira and different things and different people, kind of crossing the different cultures and whatnot.
I guess, I don't know. I guess you could say cultural things that may be predominantly African based or African American, like the younger generation just latches on, and I think that's a good thing.
But James,
What?
all Asians innately have martial arts abilities. Didn't you know that? They fall out of the womb being experts in martial arts.
I didn't say that. You did. I didn't say that.
And for our audience, I can say that because I'm part Asian.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I didn't. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight.
Yo, there are Asian American dudes, right? And they'll act like they're on some martial arts shit, and like they got their martial arts game up, and they'll watch, some UFC and like learn some katas, but don't know shit. And I swear to God, these guys they'll get drunk at a bar and freaking and posture up like they know, like their kata shit, and just get knocked the fuck out. Yeah, just because you Asian, you can't fight, motherfucker.
Well, I think the Gracies proved that enough when they were doing their dojo tours during the pre-UFC days. If you ever find any of those old videos on YouTube where the Gracies were making the rounds to a lot of dojos that were teaching several different Asian martial arts and were sticking to that one traditional style, like this dojo taught only karate, or this one taught only judo, or this one taught only kung fu, and they were going in and whipping everybody's ass with their Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and they would do that. They would confront a lot of like Asians that had like black belts and this, that, and the other, or Sifu or whatever that had a black sash in kung fu for 14 years or whatever, and they were going in and like whipping his ass in like 60 seconds because none of them had any ground game.
I really like the Gracies.
Trying to learn Portuguese for capoeira, it was a very sobering experience. I'll tell you that, because you can't just use Bing.com to translate the the song.
Bum dia.
Oh, you don't have Rosetta Stone, James?
No, I have call and response. That's what I have. I have call and response.
You know what? And like the thing is that they should really do a linguistic update and stuff, because Brazilians really don't speak Portuguese. Portuguese people speak Portuguese, just like Puerto Ricans and Mexicans don't speak Spanish. I'm sorry, that's not fucking Spanish.
I've noticed that Rosetta Stone does have that option, like at least for Spanish. I haven't checked their ones for Portuguese, but with Spanish, they have Latin American Spanish and European Spanish.
Good, yeah, because I'm sorry, I can't go to fucking Madrid and be like, "Olale, vato," right? Right, like chilling here in Navarro, right? Right, like you can't say that shit in Spain. They don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yeah, so.
Right, it was circled back around to when I was Seventh-day Adventist. When I was living in New York, the church that I went to was predominantly Hispanic people, but they were all from different countries, So when they would get together and speak Spanish, I'm just kind of sitting there trying to, I took a couple years in high school, so I'm trying to kind of break down half of what they're saying. And then when I would talk, they would ask me about it later because they see me sitting there listening. Like, so did you understand anything that we said? And when I could pick out certain words and understand what was actually said, they were amazed because they said we don't even understand each other half the time. We all speak Spanish fluently, but because they're from different areas,
Yep.
like one
Exactly.
family was from El Salvador, another was from Ecuador, and another was from Peru and shit. And they said our accents and our dialects are so different. Sometimes we have trouble understanding each other. So.
But yeah, dialects, I mean, are forever changing. I mean, and I do agree with brother Malik and how he said that, like, um especially like Portuguese from Portugal is way different than Brazilian Portuguese. And especially if you're in via Brazil or Baja Brazil, because in that area is very very African, so their language is kind of like almost like Detroit English. You know, it's like almost kind of like ghetto. They have some kind of slangs that aren't used in like Portugal.
Right. Or even just sticking with English, when I took a trip to Nairobi, Kenya one time, they were predominantly English. I mean, everybody in the city knew how to speak English as well as Swahili, but all of the media was like in English as well. Like when you turn on the TV, the news was in English, the radio was in English, the billboards, when you went to the store, all the labels on the food and everything, it was all in English. But you still had a difficult time understanding them and them understanding you because, like you said, the very little nuances that are so different between American English and Kenyan English.
That goes back to social accommodation theory, and that is as a communications major, I've been studying accommodation theory, and basically you basically talk like wherever you're at, just so you can communicate with people and build community. I mean, it's a biological reason why we all do that. So when you're in another area, it's a little more difficult to accommodate them because you don't really know their dialect. So yeah, we get into that in communications.
That's interesting because as a Canadian, it's a trip traveling through the United States and visiting the United States is like going to a far foreign country, even though it's right next door, and we all like, dress the same and act the same for the, for the most part. But yeah, language and stuff, and the cultural differences, man, it's crazy. Not to mention, y'all got a huge media blackout there. I don't know if Americans even realize this. I mean, y'all don't get like no significant international news, especially when it comes to countries like here in Canada. I could take a survey of like 1 million people from all different parts of the United States, and they would have zero knowledge of what the latest events are happening in Canada or in Mexico, for that matter, unless it's directly affecting the United States, like, some cartel is like kidnapping Americans, then you'll get it. But man, y'all got like a like media blackout. I don't know how you guys get international news. When I watch news here, I know what's happening all over. And when I talk to Americans, it's like they're stuck in this bubble of capitalism. It's crazy, actually.
Yeah, here in the States, 90% of the corporations here own, or 6% of six corporations own like 90% of all media here. So I mean, if you wanted, if we wanted to get to know how things were in other countries, we would either have to go to a nonprofit media source like Democracy Now. Democracynow.org is a perfect media source to where we can figure out what the rest of the world is doing. But as far as, we would really have to dig for that information. I'll put it that way.
That's crazy, man. I mean, but I mean, like, to be fair too, though, I mean, you guys have a way bigger population. You guys got like close to 500 million people in that country, and we only got like 35 million up here in Canada. So there's a lot more, fucked up shit to be going on. And police brutality cases and rapes and mafia shootings and stuff. There's a lot more room for coverage for that type of stuff. But I mean, granted, I mean, like, we still get that information here in Canada. I mean, we know about it. So, you know, when something, you know, pops off here in Canada, unless it's a crack smoking mayor in Toronto, you guys don't hear about it. So
yeah.
But anyways, it's getting late and time's running out. So that's that. And this was Free Talk Friday. And this is your brother Malik holding it down with brother Nhiyall.
Buenas noches.
Yeah. And brother James.
For sure. All right.
Yeah, and thank you for tuning in to our first podcast show. Be sure to stay tuned for our future shows, MMA Monday and Religion Talk Tuesday. We out. Peace.